To me, the answer to the question, what kind of simulation is like I said, it's very straightforward. It's a computational world that executes on computational rules. It's behind the laws of physics. It simulates the conditions in which we find ourselves in. And in that regard, it's almost like saying, well, I don't want to be simulated with the laws of physics. Well, you are. So, like, I know that for a lot of people that will feel almost like disensoling. But if you are this function within the computational space, maybe the amount of influence you have on what seems to be the physical world is way greater. There's the spiritual component in terms of the content, so to speak, that is being, proposed to us every moment in these hyperspaces. But I have to admit that it feels like, at least on the surface, the machinery that is giving you the content, it's on something. Like, it's made of something, and it's projected on something. It is projected on a screen that is a million years more advanced into the future, kind of thing. You will notice that actually that just feels like a super advanced civilization doing a thing. There's a thing behind the scenes. It's doing a thing we don't understand. When we look at it from this particular angle, it looks like it's doing X. From this particular angle, it looks like it's doing Y, but there's clearly this thing behind the scenes, right?
What if altered states aren't distortions of reality, but refinements of it? A way to tune our consciousness so that it reveals hidden layers of information. If that's the case, even to a small degree, that would mean that we are widening our sensory aperture, tuning into data that's typically filtered out. Danny Goler believes that through a series of synchronicities, coupled with years of experimentation and research, that he may have uncovered important truths about reality. And there's a lot more to this story. Definitely check out our first Mind Meld if you want to hear his tale in full. But where that one was a lot more about Danny's origin story, this one gets a lot more philosophical. But just to orient you for this one, a couple of nutshelled nuggets. I don't know if nuggets need a nutshell, but we're going with it. So first, Danny believes that he found a literal hidden code to reality that's only visible when our consciousness is tuned properly. A code that has now been seen by dozens or maybe hundreds of other people. And two, that we do indeed live in a simulation-like construct. But what does that mean? What kind of simulation, and what are the spiritual and ontological implications of it? Who or what is outside of that simulated construct? Of course, this implies a million more philosophical questions that I believe need to be approached with nuance, questions that also lead to some highly strange, novel territory that, if I may be so bold, I don't hear discussed in a lot of other podcasts. And I'm going to leave the introductory musings at that, but first, do make sure you are subbed, you are bell iconed, that you like, that you comment. And my friends, I am now summoning weekly members-only / patron-only transmissions. Content you will only find over on the YouTube members page and at patreon.com/third eye drops. You're going to find live streams, AMAs, more stream of consciousness stuff from myself, mind melds with guests, and we'll see what else my psyche summons forth. The algorithm can be weirdly selective and brutal sometimes, so your patronage / membership does mean a lot to me. So much love to everybody who's already supporting. And by the way, if you do initiate yourself over at patreon.com/third eye drops, you will also get access to a patron-only Discord server and occasional live mind melds. And speaking of mind melds, let's get into this one with my man, Danny Goler. Welcome back into the space, Danny Goler, the whatever this Russian nesting doll of simulated spaces we are in. We are now in yet another one together. And I'm very happy to be with you, man. The first one went over super well. It was a really fun conversation. So stoked for this one too, my friend.
I'm very excited to be here, man. Thank you for having me back again. And yeah, I'm excited for this upcoming conversation. As I was telling you right off the air, right before we started, I have a good friend, Zach, who's he's basically a true living poet in every single way. He's a musician. He's a poet. He writes these little books. This is one of them. It's called God Help Me, I'm Awake. And he sent me one as a gift, and I'm deeply thankful. And what you do is you roll 3 dice, and then there's a message inside waiting for you whatever the dice actually dictate. So I thought it would be fun if we started the podcast by rolling the dice, each one of us.
Yeah.
And because we're separated by space, but not by time or by mind, so you telepathically will focus on my hand, and I will be the rolling of the dice for you.
Okay.
There we go. So focus very, very carefully. It's my left hand, so it's my strong hand. So
All
there we
right.
go.
Left hand jerking. I can already feel it.
You can feel it. Can you feel it?
I
There we
can.
go. And 3, 2. Up. The black one fell weird. So we're just doing the black one now. 3, 2, 1. All right. 6, 5, 2. Purple, red, black. Actually, I don't even know if the colors mean something. I think they do, but let's see. 6, 5, 2. 6, 5, 2. Gotta go to the end. 6, 5, 2. Sometimes there are no words to help one's courage. Sometimes you just have to jump. Clarissa Pincola Estes.
Yeah, she wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, that mythopoetic Jungian sort of masterpiece. That's interesting. Yeah, it's how ironic that the trickster gives us something about having no words at the beginning of a long form podcast. It seems about right.
Well, I think it's just the initial step. That's how I'm reading it. You jump, and then in there you can use words or whatever. It's like, you first jump, and then, all right, I'm going to roll mine. Here we go. 4, 5, 3. There it is. Mine is, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time.
Ooh,
T.S. Eliot.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I feel like that harmonizes with our sort of ontological outlook in general. Not that we have all the exact same ontological outlooks, but in a way that is fitting, because between my flippant simulation comments and that is kind of where I wanted to start, because obviously there's so much novelty around this notion of potentially living in something like a simulation. Actually, so much that it's starting to become cliche, right? It's like one of the ultimate like bro podcaster like strains of conversation. Yet I do think that there are angles to that conversation that don't get explored very often. And, instead of sort of like, oh, we live in a simulation, instead of that, really digging into what does that mean in terms of like what kind of a simulation? Like, I could start blabbering more and more, and I'm sure I will blabber more and more. But I guess let's just start with that open-ended question. Like, if it is a simulation, what kind of a simulation is it?
That is really the question. So I'm glad we're exploring it. And also, before we started, I realized this is not a promotion of any kind. I love the guy, and thank you for sending us this beautiful gift to start. So if anybody wants to follow on Instagram, that's his handle is Channel the Sun. He's an incredible talent, so I highly recommend people follow him. What kind of simulation? Yeah, I think, and it has to do with the fact that, so the word simulation is both convenient and at the same time carries a lot of baggage. The more words are used, the more they get diluted.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the easier it is to communicate them to start a conversation. In the first video I ever put out on this topic, I don't know how many people actually saw that one, but I'm basically saying this is the beginning of a conversation. And that's how I view this whole project.
Mm-hmm.
It's a conversation that humanity has to have with itself, which would include a close observation at what we are, where we're going, and how we should treat each other as we do that. And I know it sounds a little maybe trite, but it's true. Like there's a way to move forward that will end up in a disaster. there's a way to move forward that will end up in a beautiful and promising future. And on the surface of it, what you asked and what I just said sounds like it's maybe not exactly related, but I would say it's the exact bullseye of the mandala. Asking the question about the simulation is relatively trivial because the answer is simple. The simulation is just a computational world that operates by computational rules, and simulations within the larger computational world, they're just kind of set conditions that allow for a certain kind of operation. In other words, you can say the laws of physics are simulated. Okay, great, that makes sense, but not the outcome or the agency. So it's open ended. And if that's the world we live in, then it's just, for all intents and purposes, you just live in a physical world. That's all it means, right? So it's just like behind the laws of physics, there's computational rules. So on the surface of it, the answer to your question is simple. It's a computational world, which means it operates by computational rules. The nature of the experience inside the simulation is the central question, because some people would insist, they say, hey, I don't think it's a simulation. I think it's a divine, whatever, unfolding, right? And that's not mutually exclusive. So you can have, like, God can be simulating these infinite realities. The nature of the experience inside of them can be what you would call divine or spiritual, but the rules by which it executes itself, it has to have some rules, right? even
Yeah,
even
for
if we
sure.
don't like, right? So those rules are computational rules, and in that sense, simulation just means a sliver of reality. But the reason I touched on this other part is because that's really, for me at least, that's really the central question. Understanding the kind of environment we find ourselves in is always a good idea for prosperity, right? Lewis and Clark, right? It's like if you map the space, and somebody has to traverse the space in order to map it. But the closer the map resembles the territory, the easier it is for others to follow. And in that regard, all of a sudden, the kind of words we use and how we view the whatever this is, the construct, becomes relevant and not so trivial. Because if we believe, for example, that it's just external world, the laws of physics, whatever we kind of do is kind of insignificant and will be like a little pixel in the infinity of
Right.
reality. That's you like whether that is true or not true will largely determine what kind of things we can actually do, right? Now, even without the simulation theory, there's a lot of people that I believe you included are not so happy with this kind of idea, and also are noticing as they live their lives, like, wait a second, I think there's other things going on here, not just kind of like the physical reality happening, right? So here's a perfect example where adopting a new way of seeing it and then trying to go that way for a little while to see what comes off out of it and see if it yields any fruit. Okay, then if we see some results from that, we should follow this model. So I think maybe the thing to explore together, and you can give me your side of the kind of like how you perceive it, is, are we comfortable with the idea that the world is ultimately at bottom computational? And what that really means is that there's extra possibilities to explore, not just kind of manipulating the laws of physics. We might be able to go beyond it, and we might be able to go beyond it way faster than we thought if the mechanisms that execute these new functions are closer to us than we thought. Because if we think that it's just like out there in 200, 300 years, when we discover all these like new laws of physics or how to manipulate them, and only then we can move from star to star. Okay, but what if everything I believe you believe, right? Which is that, what if it's actually way closer to us? Like, what if it's just a little shift in perspective, and all of a sudden moving faster than light is just a matter of getting that right idea, which was right here, but you were looking over there. So then, and that was available to you because you realized, oh, I'm some kind of a, well, I know that for a lot of people that will feel almost like disensoling if you call yourself a computer program, right? But if you are this function within the computational space, maybe the amount of influence you have on what seems to be the physical world is way greater, and we can do way more en masse than we can do individually. So if we agree that, okay, we agree we live in this other kind of environment, maybe together we can come at solutions and also possibilities that we never thought about before way quicker than we thought. So to me, the central question is about the experience within the simulation.
Mhm.
Simply because, again, at least to my mind, and you obviously you'll tell me your side of it, but to me the answer to the question what kind of simulation is like I said, it's very straightforward. It's a computational world that executes on computational rules. It's behind the laws of physics. It simulates the conditions in which we find ourselves in. And in that regard, it is no different. It's almost like saying, well, I don't want to be simulated by the laws of physics. Well, you are. So, like, what are you going to do about it? Like, it's fine. Just live your life. So, to me, the personal experience within is the thing that matters. It's not fake. It's very real because there's conscious agents involved, like ourselves, experiencing it.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I guess the very first question I have is not to get the most, philosophically trite as I can possibly get this early in the conversation, but it depends what you mean by computational. Like right away, I think of Jordan Peterson in that mass debate where the kids are asking him like, "What do you believe?" And he's like, "It depends what you mean by believe. It
That's a
depends
good
what you
Peterson.
mean by is."
No, and
But
that's legitimate. But again, even there, computational is a technical term, so it doesn't have this like wiggly definitional
well,
wiggle room.
theoretically, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if we're talking about like understood computer science, you can say computational and we can dissect specifically what you mean. We can talk
Hmm.
about binary, we can talk about all the OSI layers that make your computer run, right? We can talk
Hmm.
about internet protocols, TCP, IP, blah, blah, blah. But we don't know exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about this ground level base of reality that would be behind things like the laws of physics. We can guess, we can philosophize about it. Um, I mean, for me, I actually think so. I'm really not trying to just be counter to you
Please,
by saying this,
please
but
be.
I actually might say that whatever's behind that might be non-computational in the sort of like Rupert, or not Rupert Sheldrake, in the sort of Penrose sense.
Penrose. Yeah,
Like,
I have quite a few things to say on that, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, in the sense that whatever's dictating behind it might be something that is not, and maybe what I'm trying to say here is like whatever is outside of the construct maybe something that is not computing. It may be something that just is in a sort of unaltering sense. I mean, I guess what I'm pointing to is something like a one.
My puppy was like climbing on all the gifts and everything.
Dogs welcome. Dogs welcome. I guess what I'm trying to point to is the thing that is outside of the construct that perhaps, I mean, of course we can't know what it is, but when I don't want to do this masturbatory thing of trying to like walk reality back to the indivisible one. But I think whatever that thing is non-computational. And if we're saying that that's the reality outside of the construct, I
Mhm.
actually think that would be non-computational. But
So I hear you, but I think that we started by asking about the environment we're in.
yes,
Yeah, so
yes.
that's what I'm talking about. We can talk about what is actually executing that ultimate thing potentially, but that I just feel like the question in the beginning was
Right.
a different one. Yeah.
You're right. You're correct. Yeah. And then the question is so yeah, if we're staying within the constraints of whatever Plato's cave, the simulation, whatever is, I would agree with that. I would agree with that. We're clearly living in some kind of ordered, rule-based space with at least some loose level of ontology, or sorry, teleology, that things are seem to be evolving toward, yet is also open-ended based on the agency of the players or agents within, which I think I would assume that we are
Uh,
included within.
yeah, our perceptions are.
Yeah.
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 Our perceptions inform something. Our perceptions inform the mainframe in a way that it wouldn't be able to be informed without it. So they're not trivial. So they're actually playing a role because they're putting an angle. They're almost like literally the points of light that are illuminating whatever is at the middle. So it's almost like the perception from every single angle of experience gives rise to a more articulate version of whatever it is in the middle, whatever that thing is, right? And I think that these are all, you know, at best guesses, obviously. But there are okay. So let's take it that way. You know who Melvin Vopson is?
Vobson.
So
Dude, weirdly enough, I think potentially me and Adam were talking about him last night. Me and
yeah,
Adam Curry.
yeah. So he's kind of been coming more and more on the scene, and wonderful, wonderful guy. He's a friend of mine at this point. We connected around the whole, you know, simulation thing. He's the physicist who's saying that he discovered what he calls a new law of infodynamics, which is basically kind of, it's not inverse, it's not the correct term. There you go. It's not inverse to the regular law of thermodynamics, but he's essentially mixing Shannon's theory of information and some other things from physics, and then he looked at um, computational devices, so hard drives. He looked at genes. So he looked, because we had a lot of data on COVID, very fast evolution arc, and also a lot of iterations. So we could see, we had a lot of data on that. And he looked at geometry in physics. He's a physicist. And he saw that in all cases, he sees the same trend, which is as time goes on, all computational systems, which all of those are, exhibit this entropy actually decreases. So it's like it goes the other way, right? It asymptotes towards zero. And there's a whole technical argument that he makes in his paper. Everybody can go and look it up, his original paper on this. And he wrote a book. Also, I think it's I forget what it's called, but you can look it up. Melvin Vopson book, Reality Reloaded, maybe. But basically, he shows that if you follow the logic, you see that whatever these systems are at bottom, they must be computational because they behave like somebody literally made them to optimize for informational aggregation of a certain kind. So, and then I asked him, first of all, really great body of work, very interesting. I asked him, does he think that there's a way to say anything of, you know, with a little bit less guesswork, with a little bit more confidence about what would be outside of the simulation, or would it be completely detached from, like, you know, what do you think? Like, okay, so if we live in this kind of a world, is there anything that proceeds from our world to that other world that we can say, that looks like that actually extends to their space? Or, and he said, you know, I never thought about that. I don't know. Maybe not, but he's like, I have to think about that. So I think that's really the central question to what you're asking. Can we say anything with the amount of confidence that we say with science? I think that whatever we are inside, not the descriptive part that we tend to slap on, like, oh, this is how the brain does this. I'm talking about your experience of it. There's something there that does proceed to the source, which is already believed, right? It's like whatever you are is kind of, you know, this channel. And there's something about this image of the only ones who know is you and the Lord, so to speak, right? So it's almost like that channel goes from like nothing can hack it. Maybe other things are trying, but it's like, this is the purest channel of all. Like, from every single one of us is a point that has this extension cable, and it goes only from the source. Only the source knows what you know, and that's it. And you can try and communicate to others, which we do all the time. But the reason there's so much miscommunication is because we're literally communicating across universes. Like, your perception of the world might be, you know, similar because we find ourselves in similar conditions, but in some ways it can be vastly different, and we wouldn't know any better because we just kind of, there's this illusion that we share a space, right? And I think that that is the one thing that might have this property of like extending.
Hmm.
And this is actually brings us squarely to Penrose's argument, which is, to anybody who's not familiar, basically saying that because we know that Turing's incompleteness theorem states that there's a certain truth statement that we can never prove with the tools of mathematics, and yet a human mind can just know that they are true, therefore they're not
Oh,
computable, and yet
Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Yeah.
Gödel's
Yeah.
incomplete.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know what Turing's a universality of computation, and Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Correct. Thank you for the correction. And basically, the rules of mathematics kind of preclude you from being. He can prove that
Right.
you cannot take a path, because sometimes people say, "Well, like how can he know?" Well, there's ways in mathematics to do this. It's actually, I've recently been looking into this like deeper into actually what he did. It's way crazier than
Oh yeah, dude.
it's
He
wild.
is such a genius. He
Yeah,
also, sidebar, has an ontological proof that was found after he died, where
which
he
is
was
what.
essentially trying to prove kind of like a god existing, basically.
Oh, I would love to look into that.
Yeah,
I
it's
can't comment because I don't know anything about it.
I've tried, and I mean I at one point had the super high level understanding of it, but I could not regurgitate it right now.
Yeah, and this is, it might be worth. Well, obviously, we won't be able to look at like details here, but like it might be worth kind of mentioning kind of what he did, which is important. He basically created a whole language, which, by the way, in mathematics is not that out of the ordinary. People do this all the time, like uh, theoretical math or pure math. People do this all the time. Basically, it's less about like arithmetic or things like this. It's more about the language of mathematics. So there's
Hmm.
like certain uh, uh, logic, canonical logic of what mathematics is, and then you can just make up your own language within that. So you can say, if I start from this logical assumption that this thing denotes this, then this has to be this, and it goes down the line, right? So he created a whole language to basically create, to kind of track the logical steps as they go, and he called them things, and then the things that you call them also can be multiplied, added, like all that. They can have mathematical relationships. And then he basically found that you can show that certain things that we know are true, no matter how long of a route you're going to take, you will never actually know mathematically. You
Hmm.
can't take that path mathematically. So in other words, mathematics just kind of breaks down trying to make that proof, and we just kind of know. There's a lot of other possibilities. Well, I don't know if a lot, but there's definitely quite a few other possibilities. One of them is a pretty straightforward one, which is that we do know that at bottom, whatever our world is, it behaves as a quantum system. So it is quantum at bottom. There's nothing that isn't quantum, right? Which simply means it exists in a superposition of a branchial space, and then there's basically, if you want to accept the many worlds interpretation, it's the many worlds existing all at once, all the possibilities happening at once. Or if you want to talk about the wave function collapse, whatever, at least the possibilities existed as a potential, and then they collapsed into one, which again I think is kind of silly, but the, it doesn't really matter. You have this thing happening all at once, kind of thing, which is the quantum. So at bottom, the world, if it's computation, it has to be quantum computational. It won't be like classical computation would be in each and one of the branches,
Hmm.
but then you're going to have the quantum computation happening laterally all at once, right? You're experiencing the classical version of it. So in that regard, you can easily make the argument, because he doesn't make any technical attempt at this. He just kind of says philosophically it makes sense. Well, philosophically, it also makes sense that there's a big portion of your brain or mind actually doing something behind your awareness that is quantum computational, and that part knows
Hmm.
because it just did the lateral computation. It just
Yeah.
knows, right?
Hmm.
So, um, to me, there's not really that strong of an attachment to the, because we have to ask ourselves, why does it matter, right? To me, the only reason it matters is we want to map accurately. That's kind of my vision of it. I'm not married to it being that. It just seems like if you follow a lot of threads of evidence of people who know what they're talking about, it, so for me, as somebody who's a layman, right? Like I don't know the deepest equations and all that stuff. I'm looking from the outside, and here's my logic as to why it makes more sense to me that it's more computational, why computation is more fundamental than the laws of physics. Simply because if you see what you can do with computation now, right, you can see that you can simulate all the laws of physics and plus infinite other possibilities. So
Yeah.
it's encompassing the laws of physics plus some, right? So that already kind of puts it in a more fundamental status. And can it translate to experience? That's a separate question. I've recently read a really interesting paper. It was AI assisted, but it was brilliantly thought through. I'll share it with you. Basically, the general argument there, and actually, it does kind of tries to strengthen core OR, which is Penrose's and
Oh, or yeah, yeah.
oh, yeah. Isn't it core? Why am I mixing all
Or
my words today? Or core, yeah.
It's a lot of terms, man. I'm sure I do
No,
it
I
too
thought
all
it
the
was
time.
core OR. Well, anyways, it doesn't.
It's orchestrated reduction.
Orc,
Yeah,
orc,
yeah,
not core.
yeah,
Core is
yeah,
us. There you
yeah.
go. That's why I'm confusing. So and basically it says, well, because in orc OR they're saying, okay, there's something happens on the microtubules level
Mm-hmm.
where the quantum states translate to conscious moments. That's kind of the gist of the paper. And what this article that I read is saying, okay, well, what happens is you have this potential in the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
That when it collapses into the microtubules level, it actually the reason that it produces the computational level that feels conscious is because it considered all possibilities, which is the quantum state, and then it collapsed into one, which feels like a decision. Which, by the way, might at some point maybe bring us back to the free will thing.
Hopefully
But like
not.
it feels, it feels like a choice because it's almost like the universe made a choice of one, and that's the experience of like a conscious moment
Mm-hmm.
because the universe kind of made a choice about where it proceeds. And I think there's definitely some truth to that. But obviously, if you think about it, even there, you're already postulating an idealistic perspective. You're already saying whatever that thing is had a property that could be translated to a conscious experience. It didn't come from some kind of an inanimate state, and all of a sudden it became conscious. And this is, by the way, the argument that is made in the paper is that this is why ChatGPT cannot be conscious and never will be. It's because it doesn't do that. It doesn't do the
Right.
quantum computational thing and collapses into a thing. It does classical computation.
No, I'm not saying
yeah.
I'm not saying
No,
I really
it's
think that, but it would complicate the argument if it did.
so we have to look at the specifics. But before let's just finish that thread. So it does classical computation, and because of that, it only mimics kind of moments that to us as somebody who do have consciousness, we recognize them as choices like that. But these choices are not accompanied by an inner state. That's all. But that's kind of like the big picture of the argument. Can ChatGPT be empowered by a quantum computer? I don't know enough. It might be. It might be because the big bottleneck between quantum computers and classical computers, as I understand it, is the fact that quantum computers are really good at this lateral kind of computation because they're using quantum, so like statistical analysis, cryptography, things like this, but never in content. But then ChatGPT technically is kind of doing this enormous calculation of all the words that kind of might follow this next step, right? So maybe you're right. Maybe there is a way to actually connect the quantum computer in the background.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But one thing that is hard not to consider is that, first of all, there have to be at least rogue groups who are breaking every imaginable protocol, secretly in labs in like China or cloistered wherever, where you have to think like all of these borders and ethical things that you could not do above ground, they've got to be looking at. So like what happens if we merge AI and biological systems? What happens if we merge AI and quantum systems? Like I worry that maybe this stuff is already being done in a clandestine way, and we're not going to have any where there's going to be no oversight whatsoever until there's like some kind of insane spillover event that occurs, and then we'll all be trying to contain it like digital nuclear fallout doing God knows what. But yeah, that's a total sidebar.
Yeah, I think so. What to me, the whole is it computational? Isn't it computational? Is always just about the truth of the matter. Like it's not about like I don't have like a I don't have a lot of writing on it being this or that. It seems that is what's happening. to me, obviously. That's what I've been informed on as I'm kind of interacting with this higher space. It's the thing that is the most salient to me when I go into the space and I'm experiencing it. Um, there's definitely the spiritual component in terms of the content, so to speak, that is being proposed to us every moment in these hyperspaces. But I have to admit that it feels like, at least on the surface, the the machinery that is giving you the content, which sometimes it's hard to become aware of it, but like when you go into the hyperspace and then you see whatever you see, if you look closer, I don't know if it's something that is just like, you know maybe hidden from some people, or maybe it's just a matter of attention. I'm not sure, but you can try. If you pay close attention, it's on something, like it's made of something and it's
Mm,
projected on something. And if you look at that, you will notice that actually that just feels like a super advanced civilization doing a thing. It's not. It's
mm,
almost like the content can be this, super spiritual thing, but it is projected on a screen that is a million
yeah.
years more advanced into the future, kind of thing. So
That
I think,
that's yeah.
yeah,
That brings up so many things because that makes me think of, have you ever read any of Jacques Vallée's stuff about, because I don't think we really went down the whole ET UFO rabbit hole last time too much. That might be fun to do too. But
sure.
and there's a particularly interesting overlap because do you know Jacques Vallée first of all?
I'm familiar, yes.
Okay, so
I've never read any of his books, no, but I've watched him talk, and I will need you to recapitulate some of his like key points for me.
yeah,
But I know who he is. Yeah,
there are like a couple of key points that, without going super deep down the, well, I'll sum it up into sort of two key things that come to mind. One is that whatever the phenomena is, it's something that's worn many masks over the course of centuries or millennia. So that maybe things like, fairy experiences, or daimonic experiences in the ancient Greek context are really or angelic, whatever, just the whole laundry list. Maybe that's the same thing that's occurring in the modern UFO phenomena. And he lays out arguments for this, to this effect in books like Passport to Magonia, Invisible College, etc. But one of the other things he's really well known for that really slots in nicely with this conversation is the idea of there being a sort of hidden control system, and that this control system is really the thing that's above the mask that manifests, and that it somehow has direct ability to interact with our minds. And in some ways, that's one of the most terrifying schizo possibilities, because if that's true, and it means there's a layer of reality or an intelligence that has access to our minds if it wants it, or if we orient ourselves to it, that almost paints this more like Gnostic type of
hmm
picture where we're open to and available for manipulation, or maybe we're always being manipulated and we just become more aware of it in heightened um states of mind, like through DMT, like through meditation, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's probably enough to ignite something for you
this
there. Yeah,
actually does bring me to, I think, a key point. Do you think that becoming more aware that it manipulates you, or becoming more aware that you are it? Do you believe that there's a difference between those two?
for sure. Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a difference, because one could imply that you're trapped inside of a construct by some outside agency, right?
So
That
there's
you're
a you, and then there's the construct. They're separate, and you are being manipulated like a puppet, versus you are just the system executing where you sit.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. Or I mean, another way you could look at it is, that scenario you outlined before, where there is some part of your consciousness that is attached to or originating in a non-local quantum space. Like maybe I mean, right away for me, as somebody who leans very esoteric and platonic, this is like the immortal part of you that is probably um reincarnating, going through many cycles, many expressions of self, or this would be like the Federico Fagin satiety that is existing behind the physical you, that is the state of you that is long existed before this incarnation, long before my incarnation. Everybody listening has gone through many cycles, and there's this non-local thing behind it. Call it a soul, call it a higher self. So
I think we can say with, I mean, at least for me, I can say with quite a bit of confidence. Yeah, for sure. Like
mhm,
there's no doubt in my mind that whatever exists behind the scenes, so to speak, does take the form that you describing, which is it
yeah.
has this like all encompassing quality for sure.
And this is sort of it's funny because Robert Monroe of, Journeys Out of the Body, Monroe Institute, etc., kind of went through that whole thought progression, because in his first two books, he he really starts to have experiences that seem to be indicating that we're like within this construct, that there's this super advanced intelligence that is almost like extract. Do you know about the whole Loosh thing?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so he basically has a vision one night when he's out of body of this super advanced machinery that he doesn't know what it is, and he calls it like a pumping station. And he has the sense that there's something being extracted essentially here on Earth, and that Earth itself may be this huge, complex system made to extract something. And then there's this super advanced intelligence that we naively think of as God that's coming along, and it's basically you know using this substance that earth is creating essentially through our suffering and our emotional psychical out exhaust or something, and it needs that somehow, and it's using us for that. So he goes from thinking that to actually thinking that there is this sort of higher self that is over the top of all of that, that is actually it's overly simple and new agey sounding to say that we picked it, but it's something akin to that, if I'm going to be
That we
honest, to just
picked it. What do
nutshell
you
it.
mean? What do you mean we
Like that
picked
it
it?
really is us or some unbelievably higher version of ourselves and of humanity or consciousness itself, that we are not apart from as humans, or under, we're not living on a prison planet, is what he's saying, is that really we're undergoing some sort of evolutionary process that requires
That we
us
chose.
that yeah, we, like, it's too simple to say we, because like what does it even mean to say we? um
Well, you can write a contract that also precludes you from remembering at a certain period of time, but you did sign it with
right,
like a
exactly,
full, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So I do want to ask a couple of clarifying questions with
yeah.
you. First of all, um, where do you stand on the whole my big toe image of the world?
The
So
larger
like,
the larger consciousness system.
well, it is a very similar, right? It also even
It
came
is,
from
yeah.
the Monroe Institute is involved, right? So like, where do you sit with that? So like, so to me, when I'm hearing these things, uh, what I'm always hearing is basically the same thing over and over and over again from all of these theories.
Right, exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they're just saying the same thing over and over
Hmm.
again, and which is essentially there's a thing behind the scenes. It's doing a thing we don't understand. When we look at it from this particular angle, it looks like it's doing X. From this particular angle, it looks like it's doing Y, but there's clearly this thing behind the scenes, right? Okay. So my attitude is always, well, there's two things. The first one is, what are we actually interested in really?
Hmm.
I if I'm looking at the and I believe that my goal is to like really understand to the extent that I'm capable of, then I don't want to stop at any point. So like what I'm hearing when people say there's this thing behind, but how can
Hmm.
we guess? But then we still trying to guess. But then okay, well then pick one. So like if if you will allow yourself to really venture into that question seriously, then you have to take more than just your personal experience into account. You have to take everybody else's experience into account, and you have to kind of build a picture. To my mind, there's no ground to stand that there's this one possibility that seems more salient than others. Simply not the case. I personally have experienced very convincing scenarios in these spaces of the kind that you're just saying Monroe experienced. Uh, and some of them were mutually exclusive. So then at that point, I
Right.
said, oh, I see. Okay. What is being simulated is how I react to these scenarios. So then it's not so much about the truth of the matter. It's more like, how would you feel if X?
Hmm.
And then that's the information that is being collected. Or at least that's the thing that made sense to me. Because why would I be shown things with so much
Yeah.
confidence that that's the case, and yet some of them just don't even square with one another? So then I said, okay, I'm going to go about it a different way. I'm simply going to place myself in a state where I place no judgment call of whether I think it's true or not. I'm just reporting it to myself in real time, but like exactly as it is, to remember the details. But that's it. Like, I'm not claiming that all of a sudden that is the case or something. And I'm just kind of staying with it. I'm just being in the presence of it. Just like when you do psychedelics and you are with a tree, right? And all of a sudden the tree is so much more. It's not just the word tree. That's what I do with it, with the space. Whatever is being shown to me, no matter how crazy, no matter how wild, I'm just gonna be with it and just allow it to kind of unfold and see what happens at the end. And that, I would say, does open a slightly different window, ontological window of like what actually is possible. So first of all, you realize that way more is possible than you previously thought, but that's a given, I guess, with psychedelic spaces. But the other one thing I realized that actually there's an ability here that if you just allow yourself to do that, all of it becomes possibility space, and you can kind of pick one depending on how you feel. And before I, so let's, okay, so the possibility is basically what I already told you, which is like, can you just be without the need to marry yourself to one of these possibilities?
Yeah.
And before I go in this direction, question for you: do you believe we create our own realities, like actually?
I, not exactly. I mean,
Okay.
I think to an extent there is I mean, and all of this is, of course, like some of the most far flung ontological speculation you can do. And of course, if you go off of your own experience, I think that there are ways that you can glean more insight into that. But also, like you said, there's always this trickstery aspect to any kind of higher consciousness experience where it can give you contradictory things. It can give you, yeah, you already covered it, so I won't revisit that. But I guess just to keep it to the point of answering your question, I have like a mixed view on most of this stuff, where I think that there is more to you and more to whatever is going on with your individual life than we know. Definitely more than what's reducible to the scientific method and to
Materialism.
materialism, reductionism, all of that stuff, of course. But I also don't go as far as to think that there is no governing sort of, I'll just say, governing agency over the top of whatever is going on with you personally. So I think that we have more agency than we understand on the surface level, but I wouldn't go as far as to say like we engineered every single aspect of it.
Okay.
I think things are too messy and too open-ended, and it doesn't look like a cleanly chosen path on the part of a bunch of like fully sovereign you know, gods or something like that who are just like playing a game down here. It seems like there's a lot of collateral damage and unforeseen circumstances and mistakes and shit like that.
We're on the same page. I'm very much aligned. I very much align with exactly how you see it. What, I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm actually asking just to
Yeah.
explore. If you would have to make your
Mhm.
wildest guess, with the caveat, of course, that you can be wrong and you know it and all that stuff. But like, if you would have to guess, as you are, Michael, now in
Mhm.
your, what would you guess would be this teleology of the universe?
Something
Or
very similar to what's the picture that's painted in the Platonic myth of if you know that story. It's
no?
toward the end of Plato's Republic, there's a soldier named He dies. He's about to be burned in the funeral pyre, comes back to life after 3 or 4 days, and then he basically retells the story of everything that happened in the afterlife. And there's all this like allegory, and of course it's like it's painted as a myth that contains a lot of truth, basically, by Plato slash Socrates. And basically, the scenario that's um, discussed is that there is this whole afterlife grammar that's very familiar to a point where like you'll read it and be like, wow, I had no idea that this is where all of these ideas come from, or is one of the earliest examples of, at least, which is this: is it's like you die, you go to some sort of place where there's all these souls gathered. There are basically two doors. You go through one of the two doors and you're sort of sorted. One door is not hell, but it's like a door of sort of like correction and education. The other door is a door of like um, basically getting to experience this astral sort of celebratory afterlife sort of thing. Then once that occurs, all of the souls like converge back in the same spot again, and then they go before the fates. The fates essentially present to you this like a big list of lots that you get to choose from, like meaning like here's your, based on all of your choices and all of your lives so far, here's your list of options basically. And you definitely got to read the fine print, because there's some like people who make bad decisions and they totally didn't think it out, and they get reborn into horrible circumstances that they technically chose, but they chose it through their own like lack of paying attention basically. um so anyway, it's something like that where you have this mixture of, you don't just get to choose everything, but you get to choose a game or an identity or a manifestation based on what's appropriate to you at the time. And then there's like this, there's all of these implications off of that, because that means that there is either a soft or hard determinism associated with that, right? Like, do you get free will within that incarnation? Do you get free will to fuck that incarnation up, or do you just have to live it out and that's it? And there's debate to be had there on all of that, and many people did debate about it. But in the Gestalt, this is sort of what I think, is that there's probably this long process occurring of selfing that's going through some kind of evolution that has a level of agency both within life and in the whatever's going on behind the life, but it's a limited degree of agency within this space of becoming or something like that.
And this process of going through the two doors, that's between every single lifetime,
Yes, I believe so.
and then it goes on forever.
See, that I don't know. I don't,
Okay.
and that's another thing that's interesting to speculate about, is like, is there a sort of graduation that occurs, or okay, you're done playing the human game, now you play the next game, or are you just stuck playing the human game forever? And that's not a question. I mean, we can sit here and bullshit about it, of course, but
Yeah.
I don't have a fully formed opinion on that.
Okay, I see. So I think this is where my brain lives, is in that ultimate possibility.
Hmm.
And I can't really shake it off. So basically, where people always go, yeah, but that's that one thing that is behind everything, the one beyond, the one about which no questions can be asked. So to my mind, that's
Yeah.
just where the brain stops. My question is, what happens if we don't stop? If we say, okay, but why that?
Because
And
it's
well,
like Gödel's incompleteness theorem. It's like
well,
it's
hold on.
like it's like but to just say, why don't you ask about the one, is because it assumes that there's some destination to arrive at through dianoia and through logical thinking.
My
And
point then is, why even bother if you're not going to do that?
because I think that's like saying, why play Red Dead Redemption if you can't get outside of Red Dead Redemption?
But then my response would be, well, the game that I'm choosing to play includes that question also. So it's not like you're already playing an infinite regress and you just decide to stop here.
Mm-hmm.
I say, okay, I want to maybe not stop here.
Yeah.
You know the famous poem in well, it's not a poem, it's like a song in Thus Spoke Zarathustra with the birds by Nietzsche.
Refresh my memory.
Basically, I obviously don't remember to recite it, but basically the shtick is it's a song about birds, and how they choose to perch at a particular
Mhm.
place,
Mhm.
and the ones that perch in a particular place, they always have a lot to say about the ones that proceed, because they're like, oh, look at them, where are they going? Because they just chose to perch here, but then it's like there's always this infinite, like they just keep going, right?
Yeah.
So who's to say where to stop? And all I'm saying is that the way that I look at the conundrum is like, if we're gonna ask, let's ask.
Mhm.
Let's not stop at any point. Or if you don't want to ask to infinity, don't ask at all. Just be. Just perch. Like, and that's the Buddhist answer, which is ultimately you will discover that this thing is infinite and you will just run yourself down and it won't matter anyway. You just wasted a bunch of energy. Just perch. Just relax. Just be. And I'm not saying I have like a strong feeling about one or the other. I know that my brain tends to go towards the first one, which is just, let's just keep asking. And
Mhm.
I might arrive at some point where my brain will go, okay, or my soul will go, okay, I think we've searched enough. That's just not the case for me at the moment.
Yeah,
And
I think.
yeah,
I mean, I think you and I are different, the same directionally for sure. Because if we were satisfied, we would just be playing the game, right? We would just be playing the mainstream life game, not worrying about these bigger questions. Going through the motions. Do everything's great. I don't need to worry about. And clearly, neither one of us is in that situation. Clearly, we're both like, yeah, there's got to be more to like what's behind the game, though. And then I think the only question is like a matter of degree, which is like, is there really all I'm saying is I think that from this POV, I think we're limited in the reach of what we
for
can
sure.
do in
Oh,
this form.
100%. I think there's something
Yeah.
about the modality of the wanting so it's not wanting, it's being in the modality of the question. So, and I'm not trying, to be, I'm not trying to obfuscate anything. I'm saying it in the
Hmm.
closest way I mean it. Like, I don't mean like, uh, I don't worry about it. So there's something, I don't know why it's clear to me. Maybe because of some, again, some meditation experience, but it's clear to me that whatever that thing that it would want you to do in front of that door can only be done from the perspective of that instance exactly. There's no things you can bring to bear on it. It won't be available to you. The only thing that's going to be available to you is no memories, no nothing. It's just that imprint of your state of being in that instance. And if you can train yourself to just be more in that harmonious state, everything is fine, because that's the only place where you can make that choice from, right?
Hmm.
And then that state of harmony is the only thing that needs to be trained, and whatever enters into the picture is, that's how I view it, is a way to help you train to do it, so you can enjoy the fact that sometimes it kind of presses against you a little bit too much and there's a little bit of suffering, and you can also enjoy the fact that sometimes things are super blissful and super nice, but the second they go away, you don't wish them to stay away, or you don't wish them to come back. You just kind of
Hmm.
stay in that very neutral state, which is again the kind of the goal of, at least of Vipassana, for sure. And so to me, that keeps my state in a much more harmonious state. I don't worry about it, because I know that there's nothing from here that I can do to influence it, and that will just add more suffering in the universe that is unnecessary, because I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
If I can do something about it in the moment, obviously, then I will. But it's kind of like, people who say, and you might even be one of those people. I'm not knocking it down. I'm just saying, to my mind, it's a kind of a waste of energy when people say, "Well, you have to be informed." I'm like,
It
eh,
depends. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, go outside and look at the birds. Believe me, that's better for you. It's like, if you can't do something about it, and I know this rubs people the wrong way every time, and I get it, and I'm not trying to upset anyone, but the truth is, you're really not making any difference.
Totally.
Like, you
Yeah.
just yelling at the screen about things that you think that, like, you think somebody listening to you, like, you just adding to the already very negative energy that is happening, and you're not changing anything.
Yeah.
So
I
if you
agree.
can influence it, by all means, inform yourself. If you have the power and you can yield that power, you should work it for the best good of all you can possibly muster. Absolutely. But if you can't, believe me, the world is not burning down like you think. Just step outside and look at the
Hmm.
birds. And I know it sounds so like, give me a
Yeah.
break,
Touch
but
grass. Right.
yeah, but like,
Yeah.
it's true. Like,
Yeah.
you
It
will
is.
feel better inside. And also from that, that at this point everybody forgot about, but there was this song it came out in 2000s called Sunscreen. Like, Trust It, the sunscreen. You remember this? It's basically like a guy that kind of recites this life advice to you. And then
I'm sure I would know it if I heard it, but I can't think of
yeah,
it right now.
I'll share it later. It's really lovely and kind of, just like feel good kind of. But basically, one of the advice it says is, don't worry. Or if you do worry, know that worrying is exactly like trying to solve an algebra problem by chewing bubble gum.
Hmm.
It's like, it doesn't help you to solve the problem at all. It's not driving you to it. It's not adding anything. And I think the more we can get into that, did you ever, well, maybe you have, I don't know, that would be surprising. Did you ever hear somebody like, going off about politics when they're rolling on MDMA or something?
No, not exactly, but yeah,
But
but I mean, I get where you're going with this. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, if you're happy, if you're truly happy, even if the state is induced, you're just here. you know. And if imagine more people are like that, and some people would say, well, no, before this happens there has to be justice of a certain kind. Of like, justice, that it's not that's a human like limitation concept. Like you can't roll the clock backwards with nothing. And you can see this in personal relationships between people. Yes, you want some like acknowledgement of kind of say yours
Hmm.
and feel like, it was expressed and it was received and there was a recognition of that. Yes, that needs to happen, of course. But the retribution part, that is where everybody just stay blind at the end, right? An eye for an eye. The whole world is blind instead of one guy with one eye. But that's essentially what happens, because you, at a certain point between like significant others, that's very easy to see. At a certain point, you just got to drop it.
Hmm.
But if you kind of drop it, it's not going to work. You're not going to last. If you really drop it, if you really like, okay, I think we've done this enough. So what?
Right.
The somehow justice was served? No, you just kind of, okay, like, just it happened. Let's just move on. If people can do more of this, and it's a skill, and it's a
Yeah.
skill that arises from being able to be more noticeable, like noticing more what happens right here, right now, without all the noise that is happening here. And again, all of this is obviously, I'm not saying anything new. Everybody
Hmm.
knows this conceptually, but it's the knowing how to actually do it.
Yeah. Do
Uh,
you? I want to totally just switch gears
sure,
here
sure.
because there's something that we were talking about earlier that really dawned on me as a fun path to explore. That again, I think there's some interesting overlap with both in what you riff on and what I riff on a lot on the channel, and also something that Adam and I were talking about last night, semi jokingly, but jokingly in a way where it's interestingly plausible at the same time. And I think we were talking about the yeah, I think it was having to do with the plasma physicist who just got murdered at MIT, and essentially
Let's
joking
go.
about the you heard about this, right? Though,
No,
dude,
I'm gonna have to Google it now. Okay.
it's so crazy because so he is one of the most well known like applied plasma physics um physicists in the world, and he was just very mysteriously shot and killed in his home. And then it was revealed later on that it was the same shooter that did the Brown University shooting,
Okay.
and the same guy drove 100 miles or whatever it was to go kill that guy after he had killed all these other people.
Oh, so they didn't catch him.
So here, and they caught him after unaliving himself through bullet um in a storage locker. So it's a whole just really weird situation that almost feels like some sort of sleeper agent activation type thing. I don't know. But anyway,
Hmm.
this led to a conversation about, essentially like not just that control system that we were talking about earlier in a sort of different sense, but the way I think this could interestingly fit into this conversation, at least it's just a fun question to ask you, is do you think there is something like a simulation border patrol? Like there's
No,
something that keeps things within certain constraints, and if people even get too close to a border that they're like, nope, that can't happen, and that person just needs to be removed from the system for the time being.
the reason now. Okay, so the short answer is, my experience of this whole thing happening is that there's no secrets. There's literally no secrets. It's a matter of, I'm saying this in that viral trailer. Like, it's a matter of, do you understand? That's it. It's like, so imagine that we're these animals, and we're these, just like we're walking on the forest floor, and we don't have the neck muscles to look up. We don't have that. We don't know how. We're just looking down, and that's a whole world we know. And then, well, you get the thing, right? So it's like, eventually
Hmm.
somebody is born with these extra neck muscles, and they're like, look up, and they go like, what is all this? Like, what is this? A whole new world happening up there. And then he looks down and looks at everybody, and they look at him like this, and they go like, hey, what's up? And he's like, there's a thing up there. And they're like, what are you talking about? What is up there? What does that mean? And that whole thing. And then, so the way I see it is that more and more of our evolution are now learning to look up, and actually this ability to just stay trusting the fact that there's more to be seen is kind of like keeping it up there. But then every time you get tired here, you start feeling pressure, and you go, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to see. which it's just the result of you, like, you don't know how to do this yet quite well, right? Now, it does get a little bit more complicated because there is this other component, which is that they know about you, you don't know about them, and it's not exactly little, animals, but it's like very conscious beings. So now they have an ethical obligation to not shock you, right? So they have protocols as to kind of absorb your ontological shock as you start slowly discovering more and more. As Terence McKenna used to say, this is the tasteful, um, ethical way of having intercourse with a different species. Like it's like you gently let them know without like appearing on
We
their
need foreplay. We need.
when exactly. No, he says like I remember he was saying something like, to my mind, appearing with like flying saucers on the lawn of the White House is basically as subtle as knocking somebody's front door in with an AK-47 saying we're here.
Mhm.
Like you wouldn't do it that way. You would kind of sip slowly through the cultural
Right.
tapestry, and then you slowly go in there. So anyways, and I think that's what was happening, and complicated by an extra thing yeah, there are certain rules you have to kind of adhere. Like they have different laws that are more universal laws. They're the ethical laws, and they're just everything you kind of think from the Ten Commandments. And like it's like they're gentle reminders, like,
Mhm.
hey guys, like we know you're going to enter the space soon. Let's start getting you act together. Let's start cleaning this up. um so I don't think there's now, can there be a situation where a species just simply doesn't cut it in terms of like what needs to happen before they, and like there's not enough wisdom and too much power? Yes, that can happen. My experience so far was they were totally fine with me talking about it. I asked. It was like a full support. And it was revealed to me, like the little hints, very much somebody was saying it, like for sure somebody was like kind of like leading me down this path. And I don't think I'm the only one by no stretch of the imagination. I think they speak to everybody all the time, and it's just a matter of, do you understand? Can you understand? I want to Let me see if I can do this without losing my train of thought, because there's like two split things here, and I'm trying to say
Yeah.
both of them at once. The first one is, okay, I'll actually table this one for later. So to your question, I don't think that. So the part that makes it sound more like a silly, just somebody's kind of idea,
Mhm.
is because the level of power we're talking about here, they can just turn us off. So to need to go through all of that to make
Yeah.
their thing happen is absurd. They can just literally rewire your memory. Like they can just, like you won't even know that anything changed, and that thing just never happened for you. But that's how powerful they are. So like they don't need to do all this like crazy. Usually like all these like crazy things that are happening, it's just us being us, and
Yeah.
uh, and that's the truth. It's like people just get really triggered. Ted Kaczynski and like the Unabomber, right? So like we depending on the fashion in that moment, people would kind of align themselves with certain attitudes because of social clout, no other reason. Andres Gomez just recently posted this really short, beautiful. I think I posted it on X. Basically, it's kind of like some thoughts he had, and he arranged them with AI. And I highly recommend to read it. It's like super short read, very informative. Basically, he analyzes the people's ability and how people just hit different ceilings of epistemological abilities. Like they simply cannot go beyond it. It has nothing to do with IQ, by the way. So like
Mm.
some people can be like extremely smart and they just can't go about that epistemological, and that creates a lot of friction between people. So like
Yeah.
the people that tend to be more like, well, he describes the different levels. You guys should go and read his Substack. Um, it has to do with the inability to look beyond adopting beliefs only for the social clout part of it. And the funny part is that people are not even aware they're doing it. So they're like, they would align with a belief because their structure is such that if it doesn't somehow signal something to society, that's the only reason they adopted their belief system. Again, they're unaware of this. The first one I believe was the totalitarian, so which means that you believe that whatever the king said, that is the truth. Like whatever the authority said, that's the truth. And actually, if you think even in a direction that is beyond it, it feels like you're like going against authority, which is like bad and it's
Hmm.
evil, right? That's kind of like what we were a long time ago. But people are on different levels of emergence, and I think a lot of this comes from this. If we can encourage more people to look at things more for just the fact that it is versus the different, you know,
Hmm.
epistemological ceilings they have, I think we would have a much easier time.
I don't want to lose the thread of this
Sure.
simulation border patrol or whatever like the governing authority is, because I think it's a fun one that I want to continue exploring. But
Sure, sure.
um, that said, what does he conceive of as being like the sort of highest epistemological stance to take? Do you remember?
Yeah, I'll just pull it up because it's the whole thing is very short, so it's actually very doable in real time.
Is it like some kind of integral philosophy thing or something like that?
It is. Hold on, I'll just pull it up. It really is very short, so it will be like less than a paragraph. The last one is level 6, uh, integral epistemic humility.
Figured.
It's 0.1 to 0.5% of the population. Truth, uncertainty, and selfhood are fully decoupled. Being wrong carries no identity cost. These individuals can engage deeply or disengage cleanly, depending on context. They neither dominate nor self erase. This ceiling often emerges late in life after repeated epistemic injuries are metabolized rather than defended against. It is stable, light, and usually non reactive.
Hmm.
That's the yeah. And the one before that, I think I can definitely be reactive. So I'm most definitely not in this less category. But I think I'm some hovering between 5 and 4. I would say 5 is the epistemic process itself becomes an object of awareness. People here track how beliefs form, how incentive distort reasoning, and how cognition interacts with emotion and status. They can hold multiple models simultaneously and switch frame deliberately. This level often appears in advanced researchers, exceptional judges, or mature contemplatives. It is rare, not because it is inaccessible, but because it is costly and poorly rewarded. So
Hmm.
socially,
Yeah,
you get no reward for it
makes
whatsoever.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say I would add something to this. I do think that some of the levels, like within the levels, there's probably also levels. So I would say I'm on the lower bound of that. Like I don't think I'm like that exceptional at it at all. I do think that my aim is there, but I think that the level to which we are. What was the keyword that kept on jumping at me? It was um oh, it is the fact that so when you track your belief systems, right? There's also this tendency I think that creeps in from the older ways in which you still project from a Jungian perspective, you still project some kind of a annoyance or evil into someone else who's trying to stop you from doing it. Does that make sense? It's almost like we start exploring, but like so we become aware of like, well, why people believe what they do, why we believe what the thing we do, and reliably, what would happen is that all of a sudden there would be like this old way would creep in and would mask itself as this new way of thinking, but really it's the old way of thinking saying there's an enemy over there. And that's
Hmm.
what happens to people. What I identify what happens to people with conspiracy theories. They alienate and demonize this other thing, where in reality, these people that you think are just horrific, they're just like
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that part needs to be taken into account, which is like you would do the exact same thing if you would be in their shoes. And that
Totally.
is very
Yeah.
hard to swallow.
Yeah, and that actually slots back in with this idea of there being some governing entity that is malevolent, which is kind of implicit in the question that I asked, right? And I actually earlier on you said that like to think of these beings in that way as needing to do that is just sort of a non-starter to begin with, because if these beings really had mental access, right, if they really had this sort of control system level root access to your consciousness, they don't need to like remove a problematic physicist. Now who I think maybe would have that need would be like a group of human beings that
Oh
are
yeah,
that are like aware of higher truths potentially or suppressed things,
trying to
or
keep it
or
to themselves.
or maybe not even human beings, maybe like whatever the next thing up that we don't even think exists is, right? Like maybe
I,
something that is still physical in nature but could be like, I don't know, hybridized or like breakaway civilization or something like that. I think that's possible, but not that I think that that's the most parsimonious explanation. But there are a lot of people who die under very weird circumstances who are working on novel technologies, and that always gives me pause for sure.
So there's again, I have a fork in my head, and I don't know which one to do first because I don't want to lose the other one. So the question I want to ask you right after I make this short comment
Yeah, yeah,
is a little bit more details about the story because I don't know anything about it. That would be interesting to learn what can potentially be happening there. It
right.
is interesting. The thing I wanted to say is that one of the things that I saw one time, again, I'm not saying that I think that's the case. I'm just a thing that I saw and it made sense to me, which is that what evil is all the beings in existence that, like pure evil, is all the beings in existence that saw the truth and purposefully choose to ignore it. So they're
Hmm.
basically because they know that if they fully go, that means they will have to shed the self. They will have to let themselves go and become part of the all eventually. And they don't want to do that. They just want to keep being themselves. So they purposefully deny any path towards that thing that unifies them because they just
Yeah.
want to stay themselves, and that's
Hmm.
essentially what evil is at their core. So now my question to you is, because I maybe heard this case by passing, but like I immediately kind of erased it from my memory for some reason. What is the biggest kind of leading theory that people have as to why that is? Like, what is it about plasma? Is the thing we know about very well. It's well established. What is is there something with plasma that I'm not aware of that is like secretive?
Sort of. So it's too bad we don't have Adam on call for this one. But
Oh, we would have to do a three-way one day.
there are a couple of really novel things when it comes to plasma. One is its potential relationship to consciousness, because this is something that's been explored in a couple of books, like that. I talked about this recently with him actually, so I won't go too deep into this, but just to nutshell it, of course, this sort of really basic overview is that plasma is this fourth state of matter. It's not liquid, solid, or gaseous. It's this thing that only exists when you have really extreme sorts of transient um, environmental moments of, like, ball lightning or flashes of lightning, whatever. And then in outer space, you have more persistent plasma
Yeah, it's the all around.
conglomerations, like,
It's in stars. Yeah.
suns, stars, nebulas, all of this stuff. But there's also this notion that perhaps maybe these formations themselves are conscious and can be communicated with, and that's sort of a taboo piece of knowledge. And there's Adam has interesting thoughts on this. It's also
What?
talked about.
But it's not really that exotic in terms of like we understand what's happening at least on the surface, which is like it's just the electrons gets decoupled from the core of the. So it's like free electrons basically. And I mean there are way more exotic states of matter like Bose-Einstein condensate and things like this. You know, like when you cool it down to like almost complete
Mhm.
zero, and then the molecules go into a superposition in which they literally one thing. They have an identity anymore. Um, but and to me, it actually sounds like that would be a much better candidate to like thinking about consciousness because that's it actually kind of what feels like happening when you do go into deep meditative states, and you can kind of equate it to stopping the motion, like getting cooler, stopping the motion of the wiggles of your like immediate kind of protruding consciousness as your identity, and then you become in this
Right.
superposition of just like being part of the source. Like that sounds to me much closer analogy than a super excited state that strips electrons from the cores. Now, obviously, I don't know what atoms or
Yeah,
other
because
people's
because
argument
there's
is.
there's also different kinds of plasma. There's hot and cold plasma, and I don't know all of the technicals at all. All I know is that there are intelligent people who seem to be drawing a parallel between plasma and consciousness in a way that I don't understand. So I'll just
Got
keep
it.
it at that.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Sure.
the other thing is that it may have something to do with electrogravitics and forbidden branches of or branches of physics that have been suppressed, basically. So
See
if you
that I can't bite, but like that would be that would be a nice back and forth. But the reason I can't bite and then finish your thought is because it's just knowledge to my mind is just not that kind of a thing. Like you can't suppress in an open society like ours. You just can't suppress knowledge like that. People will find it. Like it's already the cat is out of the bag. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it depends though, because there are for sure a lot of proprietary pieces of technology that are contained within layer after layer of NDA within government contractors. This is a whole deep rabbit hole. Like I
No,
can
no,
send you.
you're right. I'm saying that eventually somebody will find it. You can't. Knowledge is this kind of like truly, uh, completely democratic thing. Like you just can't. Like as long as you have a brain that works, you don't need anyone else. Like you'll find it, especially with the amount of information available, and everybody has access to
Yeah,
the information.
yeah, and I don't know enough about applied engineering and physics to understand how easy or difficult it would be to stumble across some of these truths on your own, right? Like, are I think some of the basic ground level understandings are there. Like, there's people in their garages who can demonstrate like the Byfield Brown effect, where you can make things levitate and stuff like that. But is there now, for instance, a 50 generations ahead of that technology that's being suppressed somewhere and is very difficult to achieve? I think that's totally possible. But
So the thought is he stumbled upon something. Just so I understand the meme, he stumbled upon something that somebody already knows, and they wanted to make sure that nobody else knows. Is that the
that
idea?
could be one version of it.
Got it.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So like you get, I mean, there's all these stories about like guys who like figure out how to run their car on water. And then there's a story about like any free energy stuff. There's all these stories of free energy, people who stumble across some kind of free energy thing and then they end up dead under like really weird circumstances.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
of these. Unfortunately, I haven't looked too deeply into this. I should probably do that because to me, I'm so interested in what in fact is true that I should do the due diligence. I did try and look into the case of that. What was the name of that Mexican scientist that everybody talking about? Greenberg, something. You know
Oh,
what I'm talking about?
I can't think of it.
But you know what I'm talking about or no? He also kind of like had made similar noises about
Yeah,
consciousness
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a
and then his
documentary
wife
about him, right?
disappeared. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I looked a
Yeah.
little bit into that, and I'm just like, I'm looking at it from the perspective of kind of assessing like likelihood of. So the first thing to say is that it's
Let me see
not
if
that
I can
it's
find his name.
yeah,
I can
yeah,
continue.
Greenberg, I think something. Um, just do Mexican scientists who disappeared, will immediately find it. Um, the thing with these is that it's not like it's impossible. Of course, it's possible, and it's done all the time. Like there's these black ops happen every single day. But also,
Jacobo Grinberg
yeah,
Zilber. What the fuck is
yeah.
his name?
Maybe nobody could
Zilberbaum.
pronounce. Maybe people get sick of trying to pronounce his name, and
Yeah.
that's um, no, no. I'm sure he was. He actually, I watched him speak when he was still alive, and he looks like it was a very lovely person. So I'm kind of assessing these from a slightly more conservative perspective because I don't want to get swept away with a lot of nonsense. So it's almost like, do you like, to my mind, the level of finding something that people would want to wipe you out? Like, it's so much more beneficial to just basically get the person who managed to get there and actually utilize them for
Yeah.
something
Agreed.
than like whacking them. And also the fact that if somebody did this who was on that level, they have the means to make him disappear without anyone talking about it. I think like there's
Hmm.
just,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like it's just too public for it to, like, because people disappear every day. This really happens. One of the, I mean, obviously we know it, but I just recently saw a clip on Sean Ryan when he was asking, forget his name, somebody on the Delta Force, and oh, no, 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 that was the CIA guy. Anyways, doesn't matter. He was asking him if that's a real thing or it's just in the movies, and he was like, no, no, that's 100% real. Like there's a
Yeah.
list coming
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
week.
Hmm.
Who we ending, and that's the end of that.
Yeah.
But do you hear about it? Mm-mm. That's the thing. That's the other part of it, and it's not just because it's overseas. It's there's ways to do this that are completely impossible to
For
track.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be my thing. It's like the level of that happening. So somebody would, the only scenario, if I want to play the game of this, what you're saying is plausible, what I would have to postulate is that somebody got sloppy because they had no time. It was like, oh my god, we got to do it now,
Right.
immediately,
Yeah.
and then sending the same person into one place and then another place. Maybe no, but because probably they wanted to make it look like it's just a rogue crazy person. I was like, okay, well, you're postulating so many things here. It's like, it's like, let's dial it back for a second. What is more likely? That it's just the guy is kind of like Ted Kaczynski, maybe. We will never know, because I guess you're saying he ended himself. But Ted Kaczynski, what was his thing? Some people glorify him, of course, the Unabomber. He literally just decided technology is bad and is going to end us. He moved into the woods in the middle of nowhere and started sending envelopes with explosives into
Right.
offices.
Yeah.
So, like, was it good? No. What? It's just innocent people. Like, so it's like, I don't know. It just seems like, I think that people who believe in these things all the time, they will always believe in them. That's something I spoke to my friend Ben. He was on Ben Joseph. He kind of made a career out of talking about these things, but he's not necessarily believing them. He talks about them.
Right.
And I asked him point blank, like, what is the? He says, well, to me, it's more about the being kind of like ready and reminding the government there's people that are not just like buying whatever it is that you're saying. I was like, okay, I get it. Like,
and it's a slippery slope, man, because you can find yourself in a place where you're talking about shit that you don't believe all the time, just because you know that people want to hear it and want to listen to it, and pretty soon you can find yourself in this performative thing that you're just justifying. Like, the extreme example of it are like that Corey Good guy who was on Gaia, and he was promulgating this idea that he was part of the secret space program, and like the 20 have do you know about the 20 and back thing and all of that? Dude, it's a fun story that got a lot of play for obvious reasons. So basically he claimed there's a secret space program where people would do 20 years and they would be sent into the secret space program and go to different planets and blah blah blah, and then they would have their mind wiped after 20 years, and he claimed to be one of these people. And then later on he got deposed because there were like lawsuits between him and Gaia and all this other stuff, and he admitted that it was all he made it up.
I
And that it
mean,
was his like intellectual property and blah blah blah. And like that's like the extreme version of it. The more pernicious, dangerous version is you get that sort of like audience capture where you're like, do I even really want to talk about this or believe this or want to push this idea forward? But I need to do something. And to an extent, you and I are both victims of this, right? Because we have to talk about shit. Like we're trying to do this. I don't know if you're trying to fully do your thing for a living in terms of that capacity, but I am. So I have to be like, okay, are people going to enjoy this? Are people going to like this? So I always try to have.
oh, I'm terrible
Yeah,
at this. I'm like
right.
99% of my audience.
Yeah.
My audience disagrees with me.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Just
At
like
least
this,
you're,
yeah.
at least you're,
Or I disagree with them. It's like
Yeah.
they're into this shit so bad, and I'm like, and at this point, I kind of like, I learned to like just to kind of going with the blows, and it's just like, all right, let's, because I have once a week I do a weekly live for members only,
Mhm.
and there we definitely do whatever they want. And
Yeah.
then we go into all of these little, but at a certain point, I always try to bring everybody not into the boring old, like, no, it's all just whatever you've been told. No, of course not. But like, can we at least keep rigor in place?
Yeah.
Because the people that just come online and just like 369 golden ratio, look into it. It's
Yeah,
like,
right,
okay,
right, right,
it's
right.
like, what does that mean? Like, what is happening? Like, what is the thing that is happening? I don't know why it's not much more exciting for people. Because imagine the prospect of really discovering. Maybe for some people, they feel like it's actually unattainable. So they wanted the immediate, like, dopamine spike of just like, no, I already know it. Like,
Yeah, like
maybe that's what
the
it is.
meme that I understand. Like I'm gonna say the meme that, or I want to hear about the meme that I understand. And I get that too. I mean, you want to be in this like field of familiar ideas, but you also want to be, presumably, you want to just be, yes, there's a sect of people who just want to be entertained and they don't want to think. But I think most people who are watching your channel or my channel probably want some mixture of the two things, right? Where things are, where boundaries are going to, and horizons are going to expand. And hopefully for me, like that selfishly is a huge reason why I do this. Like if I didn't feel like they were, I would get totally complacent and not motivated, and I wouldn't enjoy the conversations, and I would just feel like, oh fuck, it's work.
To me, the thing that drives me is the moment of knowing. Like, actually, like,
Mhm.
there's something about knowing something for real that is, there's a transcendent element to it. There's like
Yeah.
whoa, like you just really get it. Like you're like, oh my god, it literally feels like the universe looks back at you and goes like,
Right.
yep, and you're like, dude, and the
Yeah.
universe goes, I know, it's wild. It's and that. See that, but that has to be applicable. Like it has to
Mhm.
be applicable to something. Otherwise, it's just like obviously your imagination. And I think that ultimately, we have to have a little bit, just like you said, we have to have a little bit more flexibility with how we. That's why I like about Avi Loeb, like
Mhm.
that he gets so much criticism. I don't know if I mentioned it to you last time, but like that was did I mention it to you, that conversation with him and Michael Shermer? So,
You
anyway,
might have. I can't
yeah, it
remember.
was like a super show, like that little moment between them where there was like a lot of respect and camaraderie. And the thing that Michael Shermer told Michael, which I think is correct, he said, "You keep talking about gatekeepers." He's like, "You're a professor in Harvard. You're the gatekeeper, and you're opening the gate. That's great." And I was like, "Oh yeah, why are we? What is the cat fight here about?" And then he goes, and then Avi Loeb said back, "Well, my whole attitude is, even if there's like a black swan event, which has been talking about this recently, right? Why aren't we allow ourselves to first of all have more wondrous eyes towards like the possibilities and prospects? Where is it written that if you a little bit more opened to like also possibility that are much less likely, somehow it makes you less of a scientist? Like, who said this? Like, I want to inspire my students to come into this field of astronomy, and just really wonder about the wildest possibilities while staying fully attached to what we know. Like, why can't we do the third? And I was like, oh yeah, why everything has to be so dull and gray and like just like this like robot talk about everything? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I think that we can adopt a more playful attitude as we move into the future and beyond. But that's the thing, like you said, there's like a big trap there that you get like so attached to the immediate gratifications, you just want to run with the wildest thing. With the thing that I don't necessarily get is that how many times does it have to happen that your wishes for this crazy thing to happen not come true? How many of those does need to happen for you to stop playing that game and actually trying to look in a
Right.
direction that might actually be fruitful? That happened to me, by the way, with UFOs. I know that your channel is like very big on that. When I was a kid, Bob Lazar, I
Yeah.
saw two UFOs. I know they're real. 100%. I know. I saw them. Like, I know it. And Bob Lazar was like so infatuating. But eventually, at a certain point,
Right.
there was enough of these, like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I call it around the cornerism. They're just like,
Right.
it's
Right.
around the
Right.
corner.
Right.
Don't worry. And
Totally.
I was just like, dude, I'm just done. And I remember it wasn't even related to UFOs. There was the whole Mayan thing. I put it
Oh, the
for
2012
myself.
thing.
2012. I put it for myself as a thing on the calendar, and I said, this is it. If nothing happens right on time, I'm done with these things. I'm just done. I'm done listening. And of course, nothing happened. I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm out. And then years down the line, all of a sudden, this new, now that enough people are got older and don't care, and enough young people step into the new picture, everybody came back with their from the woodwork with their books and like the around the cornerism and like, oh, it's happening. And it doesn't mean that there can't be something actually coming around the corner, but for me, the crying wolf, like way behind, it's like just like, I don't,
Hmm.
what would have to happen if tomorrow something like actual the whole thing happens? I won't be like, oh my god, I'm so surprised. Actually, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, at least it's happening now, right? But the whole build
Yeah.
up, it's there, trust me. But where? I can't tell you. It's like, dude,
I know.
just
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, and I really agree with you, and that's why I'm so like disillusioned with mainstream disclosure coming from within the supposed elements of the military industrial complex who claim to have information. And I don't think it's going to happen in any kind of catastrophic way that will ever satisfy like the people who are really the most invested in it. And that's why I'm always kind of trying to reorient myself and my audience back to this idea that, hey, there's things you can do. There's experiences you can have that will be 100 times more impactful than, whatever, you know, military bro says. Even though I am interested in that, I don't want to make it seem like I'm not interested. I'm interested. I want to hear it all. But I also know that my agency over those things is so minimal, it's basically zero. So have that be an avenue for fun, for exploration, for lore, for whatever, but suspend your belief, suspend your disbelief, whatever. Like, have the epistemic awareness to understand what's what and what belongs in what bucket and what belongs in the gray area, and pay attention to how much time you're focusing on the things that you have very low agency over, because I don't think that leads to positive places.
no.
um That said, we just talked about the simulation for like an hour and 20 minutes, but let's talk about it some more. But okay, here's actually this is actually an interesting connecting point between these two threads is when you're seeing something like a UFO, what do you think that has to do with the larger consciousness system, as Tom Campbell would say?
So I was like, because I looked into my thoughts while you were asking it, and then you changed your voice. I was like, what happened? Wait, what? I was like, did you just go to slow down speed? That was really funny. So I can tell you, actually, I can tell you my take on the whole, like what I think is going
Yeah,
on with
yeah.
the whole thing. I don't know this, of course. So like the short answer is I have no idea. Okay, let's just out the gate. Um, because I've never seen hints of what we experience as UFOs or people reporting grays in DMT space or hyper at all ever. Not even close. Like it's just it seems like a completely different thing from a different universe that doesn't belong or relate to one another. People swear that it's connected, and I'm open to it. Like I might just be the thick one. Like I might just not be getting it. Um, I think that what's going on is that nobody knows what's happening, and then the government has to, and this is obviously not, this is not new, I'm not saying something new, but some people do say this, and
Mhm.
I align with this, which is that the government has no idea what's happening, because people in the government admit, like they're like, yeah, aerial phenomena for sure, 100%. At this point there's no question about that, right? They're admitting it, it's open. It's not a conspiracy theory. The government stated officially that they're aware that something is happening. I don't think they know what it is, and they have to come up with a narrative that at least keeps in place the belief that they have their finger on the pulse, which might actually be, even if people don't realize it, there's something actually pacifying about that. And I think people would freak out a lot more if the government said, we have no idea. And maybe that's kind of like what makes the most sense to me, which is the government basically creates these very elaborate narratives and counter narratives to seem like there's this whole secret thing happening, when in reality they don't have the first clue. And I don't want to mention any names, I'm just looking at people. I'm no Chase Hughes, but I'm okay at reading people, and I'm
Yeah.
watching a huge percentage of the people in that space talking, and I'm like, dude, this guy feels so off. It's crazy. It's like
It,
it's
it,
just
it
looking
keeps the
like a
government relevant, right? Like if there
yeah.
is this whole panoply of forces out there that they have some knowledge of, like even if they can't control them, which seems to be what they're openly saying, it keeps them very relevant to say like, hey, these things are out there. Like
Yeah,
even
we
yeah,
know. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But that again, I don't want to mention who that is, because I don't know if they want to like be known for that at all. But somebody who I trust implicitly, like I trust their judgment very strongly, like a serious person. And that person told me that they, in one of their 5MEO experiences, he was shown that for example, what happened in Jersey is like, this is it. Like this is actually the thing. I was like, really? He's like, that's what I've been shown. I was in shock. I was like, to me, it's just like drones and lights in the sky. Somebody's
Mhm.
doing a flashlight. And he's like, no, I've been like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know if that's true, but like, that's what I've been shown. And I was like,
So
whoa,
more
that's
more
crazy.
specifically, what, like that it's actually
That it's really aliens.
okay.
Yeah. And I don't, again, he said he doesn't know. But like, I was very surprised to hear that
Yeah.
from that person. I did not expect that. But also, like I said, they do sometimes show you things that they kind of want to see how you kind of react to it. That also happens. I have somebody, one of my good listeners, she's been with us for a long time, and she lives in Jersey, and she filmed some of it,
Mhm.
which also she always filmed it with like this shaky thing of like, just put it on a tripod. Will you put it on a tripod? And she's like, no, she's still. I was like, why is it shaking? Just put it on a tripod.
Classic. Yeah.
I was like, but then there was basically this like light that is like going really fast to the sky, and I was like, check this out. And I actually had a flashlight right next to me. I'm like, watch, because we were on a Zoom call for members, and I just showed her, like I covered up like half of the flashlight like this in the middle, and I just went like this across the room. Like, do you see the resemblance? It's literally somebody doing like with a flashlight over the sky. Yeah, but she's like, but they were going. I'm like, no, it's literally like a Batman signal going. Somebody's going like this on the ground. And also, if I remember correctly, it doesn't mean that it's true, but at least the White House for this particular case, they did take responsibility. They did say, the White House spokesperson, what's her name? Forget her name. anyways, they admitted that that was like government drones like doing some stuff.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
only thing that's ever made sense to me is that they were experimental, like military contractor drones.
I'll tell you something. When I'm experiencing, so this is, we spoke a little bit about, some of your experiences with these things. I don't know how far it goes, but when I'm fully experiencing them, when I'm like in the presence of them, or at least one of them, brother, that level of being advanced and sophistication, all of these things that we think that might be them, this is like toys.
Yeah.
This is just like human idea what an alien is. They are like, that's just bow.
Hmm.
Like, it's
Hmm.
not. It's like, oh, okay, I get it now. That's an alien.
Yeah.
Unless it has that flavor to me, I'm like, it's just kind of like a
Yeah.
toyish thought, you know.
Yeah. Unless
Um,
it's like more brain melting and ontologically reorienting than you can possibly understand in a way that will not fit within this construct. Like in a
yeah,
way where you understand that you're peering into something that to you is as close, it's basically bordering on transcendent. And I say not, and I say bordering because it's like you can tell it's something. It doesn't just seem like infinity. It seems like some sort of
it's a
unique
thing. It has a
archetype.
structure.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
has a
yeah,
logic. Yeah.
yeah. But beyond that, it's like trying to wrap your mind around fractal living Mount Everest or something. It's like it's something that's so far beyond the norm that it's difficult to even ascribe any words to.
Think
And
about it this way. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say you said one in particular, so I wanted you to expand on like whatever
Oh,
this.
well, no, because that's the ones that I interact with the most. I told you about this last time, which is the insectoids.
Okay,
But there's other ones, and they're all kind of like out there. But the best way that I found to kind of think about it is, think about if you take like a caveman and you just let them experience TikTok.
right.
It, like, that's all humans on a thing that for us is obvious, but they're like like just looking at a phone, right? Just start there, right? And then also they're saying things in a language they don't understand, but also there's all these writings and all of a sudden all these symbols, and then somebody will like come in with like this battle thing, and it will happen like you're just like, like what? How can you make sense of any of that? There's
Hmm.
so much information they're missing, right? So imagine that, just something that is not human and a few million years more advanced than us in the accelerating pace with which technology moves. So imagine the accelerating pace from now, like if 100 years ago was the equivalent to the 1,000 years before, and so on, right? So imagine from now exponentially to a few million years from now,
Hmm.
and they're not even humans, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, what is their cultural norms, how they do things, why they go boy, oi, 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 when this happens. It's just madness. And that's what I would expect, by the way, if I show up in some planet that just, it has nothing aside from there being also in a physical space. But in this case, they're not even limited by physical space.
Right.
So
Right.
it's just like the number of rules that might be different. It's beyond. There's a really interesting thing that Stephen Wolfram said, um, in one of his first kind of public appearances about this new physical framework they have with the hypergraph and the Rulliad and all that stuff. To anybody who doesn't know, Stephen Wolfram is a scientist, is a technologist, is a business person, and he developed this in the last few years, physics framework that has to do with computational graphs that kind of seems to be matching a lot of stuff that we see, and makes sense of a lot of stuff that we look at. And he said something interesting. He said that they work with this model of computational graphs that basically just evolve over time according to some rules, and in somewhere in there is our universe kind of thing. And he said that they have different graphs to describe different kinds of portions of existence. And there's one graph called the Rulliad, which is the graph of all rules. And it also evolves. So, like, rules update themselves according to what makes sense in the
Hmm.
next step. And then they branch out to another set of rules, possible rules. He said that he used to think that if aliens are looking from like another side of the universe, millions of years into the future, at least we're looking at the same laws of physics. And he says, I don't think that anymore.
Oh, wow.
Because it might be the same universe with the same laws of physics, but if their address is in a different place in the Ruliad, then when they look back at the causation from their angle, the laws of physics look different. So
Mm,
it's that different. And then you ask yourself, okay, but how can you discern anything? Exactly. That's why you have to kind of start from somewhere that you can kind of touch or do something with, and ultimately that has to be the way that we proceed, even though we want to jump, like we want to kind of, jump out there. And the irony is, it will always come back to this for me. The kind of thing that we are dictates the kind of possibilities we can see in the
right,
future,
right.
right? So if we're constantly this worried thing that is always thinking about the disclosures, this big monumental thing that was hidden from us, and somebody out there is hiding something from me, it might be dangerous to me, and you're always in fear, the irony is you will most likely never see the day where you can actually see these larger possibilities, because you're always locked in these ideas of fear, versus try and open up, try and see if there's like a way forward that allows for more to come in without you being scared of it.
Yeah,
And by the way, even if some of these things does hold danger, it you from this perspective, just being kind of aware that maybe they carry some danger, you won't be able to do anything either way. So why worry about it? It's not like you're going to prepare for something that you couldn't foresee. That's not in the cards. But you can occupy a state of more harmony that will for sure open more possibilities of both what you can invent,
right.
explore, understand, like just the avenues, the neck muscles. You can actually look up
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
without being demolished by what you're actually seeing. And one final thing before I do notice that there's more of this happening now, which is that people are opening up, but the people who are still very much kind of like asleep like this, they can't even entertain that there's a possibility that that thing that they thought was out to get them, or actually is just wants the best for them.
Yeah. Yeah, so many tempting riffs off of like the nature of other minds and consciousnesses and aliens and whatever. But the thing that's occurring to me right now is the very last thing you said really begs the question of how do you develop the proverbial neck muscles? How do you dilate your aperture that in a way that would allow you to ask more questions or perceive more of reality or to evolve beyond the current state of yourself. And that's what's so interesting about substances like DMT is they give you the ability to have experiences and ask questions you didn't even know were possible or relevant. And I mean, it can also just complicate things to a level that is difficult to grapple with as well. So it's one of those be careful what you wish for sorts of um, scenarios as well. But I think that that's an important point to focus in on is like, why we spend so much time talking about this, why spend so much time talking about altered states, about DMT, about psilocybin, about whatever, because these things actually seem to be conduits through which you can do that. And there are not very many tools that I'm aware of. I mean, of course, there's other consciousness modulation, consciousness altering tools, but to me, they require so much more time and work and are so much more subtle compared to these things that can just plunge you into these states of hyper reality where that aperture dilation occurs in such an undeniable transformative way. So I think that's important to zoom in on is that
I think that what happens there is, I don't know if we spoke about it last time, but I think what these things are, they're meaning apertures.
mhm,
So they open the your ability to perceive more of what meaning is, of whatever the thing really is, both in terms of how it's connected to everything else, but also its relationship to itself. The reason that things get more of themselves, so like colors become more, right? They're more red. Okay, people say it's more vibrant. Not
mhm,
quite. It's more red because you perceive more of what redness actually is. And I spoke about this with Andres actually, and he's from even from a neurological perspective, it does make some sense because the layers of your brain responsible for producing the quality of red, well, they get overly excited, then whatever red is in your brain is more now. So now you
Hmm.
perceive more of that, right? But I would say that it goes deeper than that. I would say that whatever qualia is does have kind of extend to like universal implications. So I would say that you're right, but the reason you're right is because there's a hidden quality behind the pyrotechnics that is giving you this connection. It's not the pyrotechnics. You can see crazy content, crazy in terms of good or bad, but it's not going to be as impactful if the aperture of meaning is not out, like open. Like you don't get that, ooh, like wow, you're in the presence of what is happening is connection, like actual being in the presence of. You're closer to that present moment. It's rare in regular life without training. It really is rare and become rarer and rarer as you grow older. But that's why it's so important to practice these things. To your question, how do you open yourself to that? The answer with words might be a little boring.
Right. Yeah.
Meditate,
Yeah. Yeah.
meditate, do the work. Like, because when ask yourself this, and for some the answer might be, oh, just yesterday or today, and that's amazing, and you have an amazing life. But I bet you a lot of people would be like, huh, I don't even remember the last time that happened. When was the last time you looked at someone, even that you're very close with, your wife, your husband, your children, even when they're young, it's easier because they're new, everything is new. But somebody you really close to you, when was the last time you like literally was just with them, like kind of like face to face and just
Yeah.
like, wow,
Yeah.
just absorbing who that person is.
Yeah.
Most people don't even remember the last time that happened. If you can't do that, you know, like that's why we keep looking for novelty, because novelty contains this reaching out of the brain because it doesn't know, so it's trying to study, so it kind of forces that state. It forces the being with it for what it is, because you're trying to understand it. But the thing is, there's infinite things to experience in the moment with whatever it is. As Alan Watts famously used to tell the story of a woman who experienced the entire universe in an almond, right?
Hmm.
Because it is like if you, now you can't function that way, but if you can bring about that state without it being induced by anything else, but it's just a muscle you have, then you'll be able to come up with these brilliant ideas. One of the things that is the hardest, one of the things that is the hardest in the Vipassana retreat is that, and they purposefully tell you you can't be writing anything, like you can't be doing anything else. And in the beginning you say, what's no problem. Then after 3-4 days where you like really quieted your mind, you go on a little walk and you're like, oh my god, like you have the most genius idea that you've ever had in your entire life, and you're like, oh, I gotta go write it down, and you go, oh, they're like, nope, because the second you start instantiating it, that thing that opened you to the space where these ideas live, it closes because now you solidified it into something. So then you keep going, and then you just it's another layer of the onion, another layer of the onion, and it's infinite. And then by the end, you're like, dude, there's a symphony of beautiful ideas, and they're all yours. Like they're all right here. Like they're just you're a genius, truly. And I had a guy in my first retreat. I will never forget this. He, because we couldn't write, he wrote a whole album. He's a musician. In his head, he put it out. Like after
Wow.
he wrote a whole album in his head. So because you have access to it, it's just there's so much clutter and noise, and a big portion of that noise is everything you believe about the out there, the government, the aliens, the thing. It's not that you can't ever be right about these things. It's that it's irrelevant, and you are breaking you're severing your connection with the space where these ideas always live. You don't need to write them down. You just need to learn how to stay in that space more often, so these ideas are always with you. They're just
Yeah.
right here. They can't flow in because you're too busy.
Yeah.
And it's
Most
not a
people are,
metaphor.
yeah, most people are worried about acquiring the thing from the outside instead of altering their own orientation.
Hmm.
Like if you alter your own orientation, everything seems novel and magical and whimsical and beautiful. But if you're worried about obtaining the insight, the status, the truth, whatever it is, then it just seems then everything seems shrunken because it's something that you don't have rather than this like we said before, aperture dilating orientation that you're trying to maintain and live within through deepening, through being more present, through connecting, through everything you're doing.
Something that Richie Davidson, who's the guy who studied uh, uh, meditation more than anyone in history, I think there's a few decades worth of publications by him. I think over 500 publications, and they study people with that are experts in meditation with functional MRI, like they
Hmm.
scan their
Hmm.
brain, everything. And in the last years, before he stopped doing his work in neuroscience, he added psilocybin mushrooms to his research. And he discovered that in addition to other things that psilocybin does as well, there's one signature that is very similar to what meditators do, which is the reduction of the DMN, of the default mode network.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
default mode network is always associated with thoughts or modalities of thought about the self. And it's strongly correlated with production of cortisol. So the more it's active, the more cortisol your body produces.
Mm.
Literally, the more you think about yourself, and in any context, my car, I love this, I don't like that. The more you have of that, the DMN is more active, the more cortisol, the more stress your body produces. And the less it's active, exactly the opposite. Cortisol drops down. You're literally transcending the self. It's the, by the way, it's the network was, as far as we can tell, most associated with perception that you're you, like kind of like this, you're somewhere in the middle, right? And that's interesting because mushrooms do that. So they reduce the activity in the DMN, and that's why you know feel so free because there's no one to defend. There's no you matter a lot less in that scenario. But mushrooms also add the pyrotechnics. So I think what happens is people confuse the visuals with the state, and they
Hmm.
attach that
Hmm.
feeling with the visuals, and they say, I saw this being and it told me and it was so loving. It's like, no, you were in a state of love
Mm.
because you reduced the state of being so busy with what you think yourself to be. So anything that would come in your presence you would experience that with. And that's really the dirty little secret that the government doesn't want you to know. Now I'm not even aligning with some of my heroes on this. Like this is one of the things where I depart strongly from Terence McKenna, where he was thinking along these lines of like they push coffee on us because it keeps people busy, and I was like, come on, it's just there. It's like people just use it, like it's okay, like
Well, and,
uh,
and it's also funny because coffee at one point was this countercultural substance. Like it,
yeah.
it actually, where was it that the cafes, like basically everyone switched from drinking alcohol to coffee, and there was a
Oh, I
huge
don't even know this.
consciousness.
This is
Yeah, there was a huge consciousness. I think it's in, I think Michael Pollan talks about it in one of his books, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's like essentially imagine the consciousness shift that would occur if you suddenly got sober and went from drinking water laced with alcohol all the time because the quality of water was poor to drinking coffee. Suddenly there's this huge like outpouring of ideas and cultural, things just sort of like percolating in the collective consciousness of everybody because it seems so obvious to us because we have unlimited basically access to caffeine now. But imagine if you didn't. Like imagine if you didn't have that and you just had something that was totally the opposite that kept you in this depressed nervous system state all the time that didn't yeah, man. It's crazy how much of a consciousness shift it
the,
really is and can be and not just for productivity but for creativity. I mean, I'm a caffeine addict. I know that.
yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a big
Yeah.
caffeine addict. One thing I will say about this is that I can't say that I know this for a fact because I never managed to bring it about. But I know somebody who, again, I'm only mentioning people in contexts like these, ones that I consider to be like very trustworthy reporters of
Mhm.
these things, that managed to teach himself how to have like full blown transcendent experiences with a tiny, tiny bit of acid. And then he dropped to having semi transcendent experiences without anything. And then he said, it's all of these things, like if you look at this thing as a simulation, they're basically buttons you press. It's almost like within the simulation, it's not a button, it's a thing you do, and then it signifies to the simulation, I'm ordering this state. So that when you drink coffee, you're basically saying, oh, like this little ritual I do, it adds this thing that I know about, which is like more energy, more fluidity of thought, whatever it is, and then it happens. but he said, and this is why I can't say I know this for sure because I never managed to do it. But he swears that all of these things we can do completely naturally. Like we can just order that experience, including like a full blown acid experience. Or one thing I will say, he never experienced DMT, so that's kind of like
Hmm.
we'll like if he one day tries it, I want to see what he says because I do feel, and also it's not all or nothing, right? Like, it's possible that there are, to a large degree, we have way more ability to order these states than we think, which makes perfect sense to me. But then maybe there's a bound. There's like a limit where beyond that, it's like you can jump higher and higher, but you can't jump to the moon. You need a
Right.
rocket.
Hmm.
It was like
Hmm.
maybe it's something like that. It does
Yeah,
make
that
sense
makes
to me.
sense. Yeah. Yeah, and it does make sense that you would have access to untold kinds of pharmacology within the brain and within the human body. I mean, this is essentially that's what like yogis have been trying to do for centuries, right? Or longer than that, trying to modulate states of consciousness through only endogenous processes, through breath work, through meditation, through um, whatever we have on board. And it seems like that's definitely something that can be achieved. It's just not easy. It takes a lot of work and takes a lot of, you know, practice at things that people don't want to spend their time doing. But I definitely think there's something also to this idea that you were saying, that there's something to almost like the ritualistic emblem of doing a thing that evokes the state. I mean, I could not do the ritual of coffee without the coffee and get the
Yeah,
same effect, but there's
I
still
love it.
something there is still something there with what you were saying. Um, it's funny because I feel like in this conversation, I'm sort of like reaching for the more far flung, like wonder dipped topics, and you're like bringing it down to earth in a really
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah.
in a really
Uh,
useful way. Because like I have like my list of like ideas I wanted to riff with you of things
please.
about, and I'm like entity ecologies and all of these things that we haven't talked about at all. But it's like,
I'm all for it. I just think that the emphasis has to be on us. Uh,
yeah,
Here's a tiny one that maybe actually I think it's a good idea to maybe encourage people to want to do this versus just kind of like, trust me, you'll be happier if you do. Usually that doesn't do anything for people. But there's something that Zoltan Bathory, and he's, to anybody who doesn't know, he's like a ultra successful person, and he achieved all of it according to his experience due to his connection to the spiritual realm. So like he's very consciously saying he had a near death experience when he was a teenager or a kid, I think. He ran into this truck with his bike and he saw himself like in different places and he realized he can like move, and then in that moment he realized, oh, like straight up, like if I just decide and I look at this direction in my
hmm,
consciousness space, I can. And he was he was born in Hungary, and back then it was um a Soviet country, so there was no like like no coming out, no nothing. And he's like, I'm gonna be a rock star in America. And of course everybody laughed at him. It's like he didn't even know to play guitar, and he just picked it up and he just decided all these things. And sure enough, they're one of the Five Finger Death Punch, one of the biggest bands in the world. And he's famous and is a multimillionaire and he's successful and he has two black belts, one in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, one in Judo. He's a silver medalist, is this, he has all these companies. Super successful person. He says this. He says the secret society is not some rooms some people meet in. The secret society is that you bring yourself to a particular
mm,
state, and then when you watch other people on the street walking around, if they're there, you will look at each other and go, you will just know. Like
hmm,
there's a certain level of awareness that you all of a sudden clock the others. You all of a sudden realize they're there. And then there's a little smirk and a little nod and moving on until others would wake up. So if you ever wanted to actually find out, and this is, I'm telling you, this is not a metaphor. If you ever wanted to find out more, look what you're capable of in the moment, practice that a little bit. It doesn't even require that much. You will start noticing things you didn't before. There will all of a sudden be people that just kind of fall away, and other people that all of a sudden you meet and you're like, whoa, I've never met anyone like that before. That's a
hmm.
sign. That's a sign. You're getting up there. And it's a vibration thing more than a physical location and a secret society that just decides things behind the scenes. It's not like conspiracies don't happen. Of course they do. People with power will more want more want more power, and that's always going to be that case. But the funny thing is, whatever it is that we're doing that is evolving is way beyond the pay grade of anybody on this planet. And you can actually be a part of it if you just allow yourself to drop into that space. Like, if this would encourage you, I would highly recommend that you at least try. Like, take like a simple meditation app for 5 minutes a day, like something, and not just meditation, any form of self-observation that allows you to really notice what is actually going on versus all the noise in your head is telling you that is going on.
Yeah, this is interesting because we started this conversation in one of the most, macro sort of big question facing sort of stances, talking about the simulation, talking about the sort of like most out there ontological things we could conceive of. And we brought it back to this very practical, embodied kind of place. But I'm wondering if you could do something to try to wrap a bow that connects both of those, like the individual monad of the self with the macro monad of the simulation, or whatever you want to call it, the construct, whatever the space we find ourselves in. Why is what you're saying important in that sort of a ontological position? Like, what if we are living in some kind of construct that we ultimately have very little agency over, at least from an individual POV? Why is it so important to pursue, like you said before, like you're in this position where you don't want to stop asking the question, even if you run into roadblocks, you run into people telling you that's not a practical thing to ask, you're not allowed to ask that question. How, like, what agency do we have? Like, what is the limit where we are here, if there is a limit?
So I think even within everything that I said, there's always behind the what we're experiencing in the moment, what's implied is what in fact is. And I think to me that is the connection between what we are and what the unified thing is. You have to pay closer attention to what it's like to be you moment to moment to discover what is that thing that is looking through you. And as poetic as that sounds, I don't mean it poetically. I mean it almost from a technical standpoint. There's one practice in certain sects of Buddhism which has to do with this twist of attention. There's a book called On Having No Head that kind of outlines this.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And that is a really good practice because it's a very simple one and anybody can do it. And essentially you just look at, an object and then you kind of twist the attention from what you're still looking at it, but you're kind of asking what is looking. Like, just spin the attention back on what you think is looking. And don't mean the eyes. And also, you're not looking for an answer. You just want to be in that modality of the question of like, what is that is, try and perceive the thing that is looking, so to speak. And it should happen relatively quickly. So if it doesn't happen right away, you should just reset and try again. It's not a matter of looking deeper. It's right on the surface. And eventually, if you do this enough times, something will happen. It will be almost like a glitch in the matrix. It almost goes like, you're like, whoa, like there's something happens. You're like it's the first recognition of that. There's just looking. There's actually no, like, the thing you think is there is not there. That is the truth of what is happening. Now, is it the truth of everything that is happening? No. But it is the component that is ubiquitous to the whole thing as it presents itself from where you are. So this is a direct contact with it. So like you literally touch the wall. It's almost like you touched God just now. And it's so simple, and yet it just requires a little bit of attention. And it seems that content, to a large degree, is just a reflection of what that thing is kind of choosing to see. But ultimately, like I said before in your podcast, we do if we are interested in the question, then we have to grapple with, okay, but what is physical? Like, what is this? Like, why can't I walk through the wall? Why can't I fly? Why are all these limitations then? If it's all mind and it's all whatever, then what is this, right? Well, that I think that's the if you can approach this question, funny. The the thing said, "We shall not cease from exploration. At the end of all our exploring, will be that it will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the whole thing is that you can have your journey. You can have the journey of exploring and wanting to know and all of that, but from the perspective of connection with that. So you're not severed from that thing that is experiencing through you. You're with it now. So then, when you're looking at any exploration with psychedelics, if you're looking at the laser, if you have a meditative moment, if you have a moment with your loved ones, you all of a sudden see something in that moment that was always there, but you couldn't experience it because you weren't open to it. And I think that the connection is that seeming dichotomy that is actually somehow one. And I think what this is for, if I have to guess the teleology of this place, is to be able to close that distance.
Mm.
Because currently we're constantly experiencing as the other and the self, the other and the self. There's something about the closing of that gap that shows you that what is projected is also part of what you are. And if you look at a scientific problem from that perspective, I think it wouldn't be moot. Like it would not be for nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? It wouldn't be like you. That's my interpretation, right? I don't know how many people in the spiritual community would agree with me on this, but my impression is you don't have to let go of anything. If you're the kind of person, I'm one, that really likes these puzzles, you can have your puzzles. Now you're just going to enjoy them more because now when you're looking at whatever that puzzle was through that fresh perspective of, like this connection with what is unfolding, then all of a sudden the puzzle becomes more fun, more informative, and you actually get it. You're like, wow, okay, that's amazing. And I really think that this escape velocity that we have to reach in order to start playing in the truly universal realm has to do with that instance. I have a strong feeling that's the case because when I'm noticing all the kinds of people that really made like the really big gestures towards advancements of the humankind, they tend to have this property of more of a playful element in them. They might appear as like serious characters in history, but I think if you look
Yeah.
closely, there's always this component of like a little bit more wondrous,
Mm-hmm,
a little bit
mm-hmm,
less
mm-hmm.
convinced about everything you already know. And I think that's really the connection because ultimately, even when we do discover, even if we discover a god or something like this, ultimately, I personally think this game was for something. It was designed for us to have this experience that brings us closer to that through it, but not instead of it. So the
Mm.
point isn't to just have more of that experience, but to have that experience through that connection. I think that's the discerning factor in that connection between the ultimate and what we can experience in the
Mm.
moment.
Well said, man. That was a valiant effort at connecting the lower and the higher. And I absolutely agree that maintaining that like mirthful, wonder dipped disposition while trying to do that in whatever your given discipline is and whatever thing that you're doing, I think is totally key, brother. So this has been, I mean, you made it easy for me. It's always a mirthful time riffing with you. I really enjoy it. And you just took it today, man. You did. You took the wonder ball and ran with it, and you ran a remarkable route.
Well, that's a huge compliment coming from you. I really enjoy everything you do, and I was honored that you invited me again. And it's a blast, man. So I'm glad this was fun for you as well, and I'm sure we'll do more of them. When I come visit, I will come visit you at some point. We should do a three, like in person,
Yeah,
like a three-way. It would be fun to record also with Adam. That would be
Yeah.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah, we should we won't even get into it this time, but we'll say that Adam and I attempted the laser experiment last night and
Yeah.
we
We'll
we
we'll
weren't successful this time, but we'll try it again.
yeah. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that, and I'll also maybe I'll be able to come and we'll guide you actually
Yeah.
through the process. But I do appreciate that you attempted. That's already something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that like I can tell, I mean just to closing thoughts. It's it, it's not just as it sounds really straightforward. But then once you start trying it, you realize, okay, there's a whole kind of grammar to this, and there's a familiarity to getting into a certain zone, but not too deep, but not too shallow. And it takes a little coaching and practice to get to where you need to be.
Yes, until you see it. So
Right.
when you will see it finally, you'll be like, oh. And
Yeah.
then it's just like, and then you can't shake it off. And if I ask you what changed, every time I ask people, they're like, I have no idea. I just
Hmm.
now see it as clear as day and it's just there. I think, funny enough, because you asked me about the connection between the ultimate and us, I think that the second we figure out what is that, like, why is that some people are having a hard time in the beginning, it will tell us something extremely fundamental
Hmm.
about what we are and how we perceive. We obviously not going to get into it in this one, but eh, we have strong reasons to believe that it has to do with the ability of your software level to make certain gestures both in, so almost like zooming into whatever the light is, and also rotate. So there's like
Hmm.
a, and some people do it more naturally maybe because they already kind of do that without even knowing they're doing it, and some people do it differently, so they need to do that. They
Hmm.
need to kind of
Hmm.
do that thing, and but the second you find the angle, your brain finds it, and that's it. It's
Hmm.
like it's locked. But and again, I want to be super clear. I don't know this for a fact, but I there's a very strong feeling in me that it will tell us, it will inform us in a major way about how we perceive and what happens when light actually hits our cornea.
Hmm. It's intriguing stuff, brother. Yeah, I'll definitely keep exploring. And yeah, let me know. Let me know when you're planning to come here, and we'll set it up for sure.
Your pleasure, brother. Thank you.